From the many ancient records and descriptions of the Earth-lunar worlds during the golden age of celestial union, we have a clear picture of how the Earth appeared before the present world features of continents, oceans, and mountains acquired their present chaotic state, the surface of which was one of even, luxurious, slightly undulant plain. The paradisiacal state of Earth, fundamental to all the world's religious and mythological concepts, which all describe the Earth as lacking the present oceans, mountains, desert wastes, seasonal and climatic extremes, day and night and the seasonal round not as yet in being, in which sense time had not as yet begun. As pictured in these records, the skies of Earth were one continuous dome of scintillant golden light, which concealed the celestial firmament from earthly vision. Accentuation and diminution of the glowing radiance, all that could be perceived of the solar orb. Appearances which coincide with those of similar features as presented by the united cometary bodies, which are similarly sheathed by a celestial glow, flanked and crowned by the undulant splendor of the ultra-radiant wings of irradiant plasma folds. The lunar orb, a radiant celestial home of the gods, dominated one hemisphere of Earth. The world of the gods, which during the Golden Age was united with Earth and visible to all. These ancient descriptions of the paradisiacal Earth, basic themal motifs of both legendary and later religious mythologies, each derivative version placing the celestial world in their own backyard, Greek upon Mount Olympus and Babylonian Hebrew upon the Tigris-Euphrates plain. The Egyptian required the services of a celestial ferryboat piloted by the god Nuer to reach the paradisiacal plains, which to the American peoples were the happy hunting grounds. Pictured in these paradisiacal worlds is an Earth the surface of which produced abundance of lush vegetation of high chronosonic growths in accordance with a cosmic ordination. Rank, weedy degeneracy of flora and fauna which is now common on Earth, not as yet in being. Climatic global equity such that mankind required neither shelter nor clothing. Rains and storms then unknown upon a world irrigated by light condensate dews, rendered aromatic by hydrocarbon content, condensing to form the honeydews, manas and ambrosias, which were the delectable sustenance of both gods and men in paradise. Later Greek versions converted to the Rabelaisian cavortings of the Olympian gods and goddesses amid the boscage of Parnassus. The Jewish version as conceived by Ezra, aborting to an opposing extreme of an obsessional sexual prurience not present in the older versions of a greater antiquity. Both the Vedic records of India and Norse mythologies picture a catastrophic termination of the Golden Age, which brought into being the present chaotic geophysical features of the world and the separation from Earth of the celestial sphere. Man's misuse of knowledge precipitating a global stratal disintegration, ground and pulverized in the great world mill, and turning the waters of Earth to salt. While the periods of the Golden and subsequent world ages are of major interest as the predecessors of our present world, human racial memory reaches back into more infinitely remote world ages, which had previous existence. A reach which is stated in the Manusmriti as being 4.32 billion years, extending to the first beginnings of the Earth's existence. It is a most remarkable coincidence that, when measured by radioactive decay of uranium-thorium, modern science calculates the Earth's age as being 4.5 billion years, as are the meteoric fragments derived from space. In terms of dating, we now perceive that the parable of Surya and Sanya and the first formation of the Earth treats of events occurring over 4 billion years ago, while the parable of Chandra and his wife Earth covers more recent ages. The final union and ejection of the Moon transpired as recently as some 26,000 years ago. All surface traces of earlier civilizations swept into oblivion, erased during the chaotic upheaval and transposition of the Earth's surface strata. Although our main concern is with that of the terminal union of Earth and Moon, which is the final scene of the Chandra legend, many surviving legendary fragments illustrate the varying physical features prevalent on Earth during many epochs and lend color and dimension to the overall picture. It is also now perceptible that the Greek legends of Prometheus, Pandora, and Epimetheus relate their version of the Earth's epochs as related by the Surya Sanya mythology of India. The Promethean fire, which devours entrails, a variant of the solar elements of Vishnu Karma. The Herculean cycle formed the forcible ejection by Earth of the bastard moon, with the loss to Earth of quantities of substance, to the final shattering of the Earth to create mountains, mainly constitute a lunar epic. From the Chinese legends, we again have another version of the lunar transitions in the bounding March hare moon, and in the Heimei chants of Zain, the creation, fire and flood narratives, the secret sciences of the immortals, transmutation of elements occurring in the Chia and Chen legends. As with Prometheus, Chia for his betrayal of the secret sciences being struck down from the company of the immortals. Versions symbolic of the fall of man from an earlier state of superior civilization, and of the typical penalties incurred by that descent. Many world legends also illustrate the reduction of gravitational force during the celestial unions, when all was so light and free that people danced in the air like leaves in the wind, of great stones, which could be moved by harmonic vibrations, and of a world which wagged merrily along by means of a song. Tales of our ancestors who aped through the air, impelled by the resonance of tuned discs. These stories, being of global incidence, indicate that the transfer of energies from the Earth to the lunar mass for equitation considerably reduced the strength of the Earth's gravitational field. Enchanted chariots of the Irish heroes, sailing freely through the air and ascending to the palaces and lands of the gods, which were visible in the heavens. There are many descriptive incidents of this interchange of electronic energies between planetary spheres. These flows of exchanging energies described as that of a long-running spark, differing in nature from those of momentary discharges of lightning from cloud to cloud and to Earth. When uncontrolled in phase, the interplanetary exchanges cause reversals of global polarities and reversal of axial revolution, so that although the axial rotation remains constant to the inhabitants of the sphere, the heavens apparently reverse their ordinary rotation. This reversal of orientation transpired 4 times during the period covered by the Egyptian annals, while the Greek legends of solar reversal and catastrophe, Atreus and Phaeton, are familiar to most of us. The Book of Dzyan, however, indicates that during remote epochs of Earth's history, polar reversals not only extended over long periods of time, but also wrought malefic changes in genetic reproduction. As the stanza relates, after 300 million years had elapsed, Earth turned round. She lay on her back, on her side. She created from her own bosom. She shook them off her back whenever they overran the mother. We find a similar exposition in the Greek legend of Apollo, which states that the slime with which the earth was covered during chaos produced excessive fertility, calling forth every variety of production, both good and bad, amidst which arose the gigantic python which Apollo slew. With the removal of the normal checks and balances by untoward circumstances, the proliferation of species surpasses comprehension. It has been calculated that with balancing checks removed, plankton would proliferate to such a degree that within 10 days, everything would be crowded off the face of the earth. 1 week later, there would be a further mass equal to the sphere in bulk. Flies, fish, chickens, rats, rabbits, and plants require slightly longer periods to achieve similar results. Events described as occurring during past ages show that both floral and faunal growths ran wild due to disruption of the natural order by human acts. A disorientation which persists into present times and which is the source of the necessity of man to labor for existence. Sweat upon both sides of the brow, in fact. As intimated in the Chandra legend, the sources of the catastrophic separation of the spheres causing chaos were acts of violence perpetrated by the rebellious generations of man toward the termination of this age. As to the form and nature of these acts, we have a plethora of descriptive accounts in the Mahabharata and other mythologies, wherein we find ourselves immersed in a strangely modern world. These events depicted in the Pavas seemingly prophetic. Arjuna burned all the Kurus by the heat of his weapons, which were like the sun which appears at the end of the age, consuming all creatures. Missile which contained the power of the universe, when launched from the air against the triple city, blazed like 10,000 suns. Earth with all her mountains trembled. Seas swelled in agitation. Mountains split as darkness set in and evil-bearing winds began to blow. Burned up by the energy of that terrible weapon, the forms of the slain could not be distinguished. All members of the race of Vrishnis and Antakas became consumed to ashes. Sounds nauseatingly familiar, doesn't it? And these were only incidental later conflicts which precipitated the lesser chaos of the monstrous floods and the obliteration of the last surviving lands and remnants of ancient civilizations, Mu, Atlantis, and Sewenda Gondwana land, of the lost continental legends. Both the Sanskrit and other legends attribute the violent separation of the Earth-Moon union to a previous period of cosmic warfare, waged not only upon the Earth, but in the heavens also. The cosmos itself blazes with turbulent fires under the seething surges of untoward energies reloaded by the discharges of nuclear, ultrasonic, and electronic instruments of devastation. Surging, suffusive charges of the energies overloading the dual capacitances of the spheres and upsetting the fine, balanced interface of harmonic union prevailing between the united, celestial and terrestrial worlds. Although both spheres in union were sharing a common insulative atmospheric ring and outer plasma zone, the proportionate size of the Moon to Earth of 1/4 evidently proved a critical factor. This proportion equaling the quarter-wave inductive features demonstrated and utilized by Tesla to raise the capacitance charge of Earth to a point beyond which the surcharge burst through the insulating atmospheric layer in ever-lengthening lightning flashes of increasing intensities. This multiplication by inductance between the spheres drives these apart like two suspended pith balls subject to static charges. This quarter-proportionate feature conceivably responsible for the untoward strengths of both lunar mass radiation and for the intensification of reflected solar radiation, which suffuse with disproportionate tidal intensity land and sea masses and affect every biological element upon Earth, including the procreative and mental capacitances of mankind. And so it was, as the very cosmos appeared to be devoured by racing sheets and coronal glares of celestial fires flaring in supranoval surradiance, upon an Earth direly blackening and rent by the lancing shafts of cosmic fires directed by the sinning, mindless breeding of gods and man. The first vibratory tremors of induced resonance began their rack of the stratal depths, increasing their intensity as each discharge of cosmic weapons added still further quotients of heightening potentials to the spheres, until the accumulative surcharges passed the limits of tolerances. And with flashing tumultuous thunder, the binding atmospheric snell ruptured with sizzling glare as globe-rending fluxions surged and resurged through the massive spheres, now oscillating and shriekingly vibrant beneath the stresses of the climaxing differentials of potentials. Pulse upon pulse, surge upon surge, now leaping and flashing from sphere to sphere and reaching with vicious lash toward the stratospheric maelstrom of riven, crescentic cosmic fluxions as the worlds seethed to parturition. Rent asunder by their now intolerable differentials of mass surcharges, suffusively bulging towards each other's mass, with vast masses of fluid and erupted strata surging into the zone of union between the worlds parted. Flora, fauna, and the works of man perishing amid the weltering maelstroms of elongating stratal tides. As the tidal masses of erupted strata were drawn into a columnary mass, linking the two separating worlds, these developed a secondary intermediate bulge at the zone of gravitational equity or neutral, parting either side of this as stresses increased beyond the rupture point. The great distortional bulges collapsing in gravitational rebound upon the worlds as the isolate vortexial elements in response to solar gravity sped into space. A swirling vortexial medley of balling stratal fragments turbulently gyrating around a fleeting gravitational center of their mass. A catastrophe-spawned microgalaxy intrusively foreign to space and cosmic order,